If totally organized is on your New Year's resolution, you're going to want to listen to today's show. Hi there, I'm Angela Brown, and this is Ask a House Cleaner. This is a show where you get to ask a house cleaning question, and I get to help you find an answer. Now, I'm connected to the best and the brightest minds in the house cleaning and the professional organizing space. If I don't have the answer, I know where to go to find one. So if you have a question, you can go to askahousecleaner.com. There's a blue button right there in the right-hand corner. You click on it and a microphone appears. You just start talking to me and your question will come to me right here at the show. Then my job is to go find you an answer. All right, so as we begin the new year, I'm really excited because so many people are talking about minimalizing and they're downsizing and they're getting organized and they're decluttering and they're creating that perfect place of harmony inside their homes. So inside today's episode, I have one of those experts that I went out and I found, and this is Janet Taylor, who owns a company called Totally Organized LLC. And she has a podcast that you can listen to right now. It's absolutely free of charge. I will leave links in the show notes to her podcast. But she's also a life coach. So she helps you get organized inside and outside in your space. It's absolutely brilliant. So please help me welcome from Totally Organized, Janet Taylor.
I, of course, I'm Janet Taylor, better known as Organizer Janet, and I got into this business over 25 years ago as a result of a downsizing. I was doing something I really love, which was customer service, but then people kept telling me, whenever we need to find something, we can always find it on your desk, Janet. So then I started doing a little research and found out there was a local organization, a national organization of organizers. So that's what got me on this journey. And really, I started off really basically doing offices, but then people wanted to take me home. And then people started saying, well, can you talk on the topic? And that's really how I really began to expand my passion for it because, I love helping people on their journey to live an organized life. And I always say on their journey because it's something we can do each and every day to help us move towards that goal of living an organized life.
And now you also have an amazing podcast about organization. Tell us about that.
The podcast is Got Clutter, Get Organized. And that was started because I found organization is not necessarily always the closets and the kitchens. It's other things. It's our life. So many people are pet owners. So how do you organize that stuff? Or sometimes people are just really trying to downsize because maybe they've worked for 20, 30 years and they've decided, hey, let's get a smaller house. So how do we do that? Or sometimes, unfortunately, Angela, we've all lost a loved one, and how you navigate not only just dealing with that loss, but dealing with their stuff after they're gone.
Well, that sounds like we need to have you back on the show here for several more topics.
And I would love to join you.
Well, as we move into the new year, there are a whole lot of people that are focused on starting their life over again, and they're going to become organized in 2020. This is going to be the big year for them. Tell us a little bit about where you go to get started. Let's say that you've not been organized in the past and you've got some clutter in your life. What is your first step?
I always tell people, try not to get overwhelmed because what happens is they go into that room and they say, this is the year it's going to be organized. And I tell people, really begin just by sorting things into categories, because then you don't get yourself overwhelmed and trying to figure out, do I need to keep it? Where does it go? Just sort, because when you sort, then you find out that maybe you have 10 white shirts and maybe you have 20 pencil packs that you really don't need, because once they do the sorting, then the next thing is to go to each one of those categories and start purging. And that makes it a lot easier because then you see everything you have, you've gathered everything. So then you know what you need and what you don't need. And then what's left, then you organize. Because I tell people, that helps them a little bit easier than going in the room thinking, okay, I've got to figure out whether I want to keep it. I got to figure out where it's going to go, what kind of container. Let's just start with just the sorting.
And it's interesting you bring that up because I did that exact process with my staplers. And you wouldn't think people have a lot of staplers, but I had 11 staplers. And one of them was a really long stapler that we used to make those pamphlets back in the 80s. Like nobody is making pamphlets anymore, and we're not using those big staplers. And it was still in perfectly good condition. And unconsciously, I wasn't going to let it go because it was still good. But when I talked myself through it and I said, I will probably never make another pamphlet that's made of paper in my life because now everything's online, then I was able to let it go and get rid of it.
And it is easy when you talk yourself through it, because recently I'm working with a client who she just retired and we're going through her closet because she's downsizing. She had all of these suits because she was a principal. So I said, are you going to be a principal again? And are you going to wear those suits again? I says, now you're in a life of leisure. You're talking about taking classes. You're talking about entertaining. So is that going to go with your lifestyle? And she said, no. So we were able to not only get rid of those suits and make space, but also we were able to donate them to an organization that could use those suits.
And you know, we are not professional organizers. We're house cleaners by trade. But going into customers' homes, and I'm in the Charlotte, North Carolina area where we have snow like one day a year. We don't have cold, bitter winter times like they do in Minnesota. And we had a client from Minnesota who had just a closet stuffed full of these huge winter coats. And she wouldn't let them go because the winters get brittle and they're horrible there in Minnesota. But in North Carolina, it's like 65 degrees outside. I'm like, you do not need all these coats. Do you want to just hang on to like 3 of them? She's like, you know what? Let's get rid of all of them. I have a light jacket and that's all I'm wearing this winter. And so off with all the winter coats because she didn't need them here.
And I think sometimes it's like having that conversation with yourself, but also maybe having a friend or professional just kind of talk you through, have that conversation. Like, do you really need to use this? Do you not want it? Do you have space for it? Because I shared with somebody that, in my mindset, we all like to save money, like I do. And I would buy these huge cases of paper towels because, I always like to use them. But then I realized I had to figure out where to put them. So now I am fine with getting the pack of 2 because I have one I can put on the roll, one I have for reserve, and I have enough space for that. So I don't have to figure out space for those kind of things as well. And also, I'm not really spending money that I don't necessarily need because that whole pack actually lasted me an entire year. But an entire year, I had to figure out where am I going to put things when I'm living in a small space.
Well, and I think that's key because there are a lot of people that buy things because they're on sale, not necessarily because they need them. I was talking to a guy the other day and he said every time his wife goes to the store, she buys whatever's on sale. And that might mean like 25 packs of chocolate chips when she's only going to make 2 or 3 for Christmas. She doesn't need all of them. So by the time she gets around to using them, they've actually expired or the dates are no good on them or whatever. He says, we have way more food than we will ever use in a lifetime, but she buys everything on sale and then buys everything that they have. What do you say to people like that?
Well, sometimes you have to look at the cost factor because, like you said, she wasted, which means if she's wasting it, then she has to throw it away. And that's money just going out of the door. And a friend shared with me because her husband loves to cook. So he's got all these spices. But then she showed me a picture of all the spices she has to throw away. She said that was a waste of money. So sometimes you have to look at it. I mean, you're saving money on the front end, but are you going to waste money on the back end with all the things you're going to have to get rid of?
It's interesting you bring up the spices because I don't cook. Don't tell anyone, but I don't cook. If it goes in the microwave for 2 minutes, we're good. But my husband wanted to buy me one of these really expensive spice racks that has all these spices in it that I know I will never use in a lifetime. It would make more sense for me, just exactly what you're saying, to be at the health food store and to buy the 2 or 3 spices that I regularly use for the few items that I cook and let someone else that actually cooks have the really nice fancy spice rack. And that way I don't have to store any of it. And I don't have to worry about expiration dates and is it fresh and all that stuff because I'm not going to use it. I know I'm not going to use it.
And I'll confess, Angela, I'm not a cook either. And it was so funny. One time my girlfriend had to actually stay with me and take care of me after I had surgery. And she opened up my cabinet and there was like a couple of spices. And I'm like, I'm not the cook and the chefs like everybody else. I have, like you said, those 2 spices. I use them when they're done. I buy some more. I'm not wasting. So sometimes we have to really be honest with ourselves in our usage of things, but also in the space that we have.
Well, these are life tips that are absolutely going to help us as we move into the new year. All of those are fantastic. Please tell our listeners where they can go to find you and hire you.
They can go to my website, which is janetmtaylor.com. That's janetmtaylor.com. And of course, they can always find me on Instagram at Organizer Janet.
Alrighty, and that was Janet Taylor from Totally Organized LLC. And I'm going to leave links in the show notes to her podcast and the things that we talked about today. I want you to get to know her. Brilliant mind. All right, if you found this helpful, please pass it on to a friend. If we've earned your subscription, please subscribe. And until we meet again, leave the world a cleaner place than when you found it.